The Northport VA Medical Center is proud to contribute to the Veterans History Project, an effort of the American Folklife Center of the Library of Congress. Vivid as if they happened yesterday, the following accounts will make you laugh, cry, and remember. The stories are not a formal history of war, but a treasure trove of individual feeling and personal recollections. Through stories, we can form a personal connection with the storyteller and begin to truly know and understand the veteran's experience.
This is April 19th, 2006. This is an interview with Mr. George Thomas, an American ex-prisoner of war. It is being taped for the Library of Congress Veterans Oral History Project and for the Northport VA and Mr. Thomas. Good morning, Mr. Thomas.
Good morning, Joe.
Okay, you are a World War II veteran. What were you doing up until the time you entered active duty?
I was in high school. I was one of the ones where they were taking them 18 years old, and I just graduated when I was 18, and I went into the Army then I got drafted.
Where were you living?
I was living in Hicksville. I still live in Hicksville.
Oh, wow.
I was born in Jericho, and I came to Hicksville when I was 4 years old. So I've lived there all my life.
Very good.
And my wife came from Hicksville, and we were married 58 years.
Yeah, congratulations. So you were living in Hicksville. What year was it that you joined up?
1944.
1944. And tell us about your basic training experience. Where did you go?
Well, this was a time when, you'll remember, there was a song, "They're either too young or too old," and I was one of the young ones. So I got drafted, and I naturally went to Camp Upton, right local. Probably the first time I left my home. We didn't go much in those days. But then I went to South Carolina, took basic training, and being out of high school, I was in athletics, and I could run and jump, and so basic training was very easy for me. And I went in when I was saying that they're either too young or old. They weren't taking men over 39 years old, and I had gone in with a lot of them, and a lot of us were 18 and that age limit. So I got sort of not disgusted, but I was saying, my God, I got to go into combat with some of these older guys. They can't jump over the wall, you know. So and I used to fly over it, you know, hit the wall and over it, and then under the things. So I said, well, I'm going to get out of this outfit. And they came around looking for volunteers for the paratroopers. And it sounded good, $50 extra a month, and I said, I'm going. So from there I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, and I took all my basic jumps, and after basic training, the first basic training, South Carolina, Camp Cross, South Carolina, I would have went home, but then I missed that one. I went on to jump school, and I took another basic training, and then I got a furlough. And then you came back, and you had to jump. You had to jump again, and if you refused to jump, you were put in the stockade, because a lot of guys just joined up to to go home and then come back and refuse to jump. So they would put you in the stockade. So right after that, it was just training, and up till November, October, November, I was sent overseas. And
where'd you go overseas?
I landed in Le Havre, France, and then they shipped us up. December came in when the breakthrough came, December 16th, and I was in France, and then they moved me up to a place called Givet, France, which is on the Moselle River, and everybody knows Charlemagne. Charlemagne was the ruler of France. We were in one of his castles, and we took some training up there.
What kind of training?
You know, just keeping physically in shape and everything.
Okay.
Because this was the time we got there just by the time of the breakthrough. The Battle of the Bulge started. So we used to be in this huge castle, and then we went down to go into town or anything. We walked a couple miles and across the Moselle to a town called Dinant. And Dinant, from there on, we got the call that we had to go in to help the Battle of the Bulge. It had already started, and we got there, and we went in on trucks. We took, you take jump training, and we jumped off the back of a truck. So they throw your gear, you said throw your gear over there and went right into combat.
Now, before you got into combat, were you able to communicate with your family? Were you able to write letters, receive letters? Was there any communication?
There was no connection, really. I mean, we were very poor, and like everybody in those days, didn't have a phone, had no connection, you know, or anything. I did send some letters home, you know, telling them we landed in Southampton, went across the canal to what do you call it, to Le Havre, France, and then from then on was a freight ride right on up into combat.
Okay, so and while you were going through training, were there any members of the military of your unit that you were particularly close to? Did you forge any friendships that you had going into combat from basic training?
Well, there was one fellow I was very close to, was named Lefty Alfred Vithier. And we went over together, and but we all got separated. Like we joined the 101st Airborne, but some went somewhere and some went the other. I went to the 327 glider outfit, and they went right into combat. And I got captured, and I was only there maybe a week, 2 weeks. You know, we did patrols, and the Germans had Bastogne surrounded by.
How many of you would be on patrol at one time?
Well, we'd go out in squads, you know, see, reconnoiter where the Germans were, and some nights we'd go out and we were pretty close to them, and we'd come back and report. And I got caught, if you would be interested in that now, I got caught in a little town called Longchamps, and why I'm familiar with that name, years ago, I went to when I was in high school, we went to the city and we went to Longchamps restaurant. So, I put that name right with it. But Longchamps about 5 miles out of Bastogne, and we had been fighting, and the Germans were all around us. And when I got caught, which we'll get to now, was I relieved the squad up on a hill, and they were all dug in, and they were there all day, and we went up there about in the evening, and the foxholes were all there. So there was 12 of us, so it was like in a horseshoe, and I was on this end, and then we had 2 in each foxhole, and the Germans were down below, and it was an embankment across, and it was forest over on the far side there. And as nighttime came, the other squad left, and we took our places there. And as nighttime came, they started throwing out mortar shells, and as it got dark, it quieted down as the evening came on. So we had been fighting them. You know, here and there, you'd hear them crawling out in front of you and so forth. And so as morning came, and I'm jumping, you know, a lot of things in there. As morning came, they drove 3 tanks around the back of us, and it was a snowy morning, January 4th, worst winter in Europe. I got to get caught. So they drove in the back of us with the tanks, and they started firing over our heads with machine guns, and the sergeant was almost right under the front end of one tank, and he went out and he surrendered, you know. So he said, "Come on, guys, we can't go anywhere." So,
right. What were you thinking? Were you thinking that might you die that night? Were you thinking that with all this?
Well, I'll tell you, and I got a lot of things to say. I hope I don't have to take too long on this for you, but. I don't know if you had remembered some Malmedy. Malmedy was where the Germans had, off the tailgate of a truck, they killed 80 prisoners and left them out in the snow.
It's a movie.
Okay.
Yes.
And I had read this in the Stars and Stripes. I mean, in the Stars and Stripes, it said the Germans were not taking prisoners, and that they shot these 80 guys, and they were laying in the fields in Malmedy under the snow. So when I thought the war was over, when these guys were celebrating when they captured the 12 of us, I mean, they were yelling and screaming, and I said, my God, what the heck's going on, you know? But then they corralled us into a snowdrift, and they swung the tank guns on us, and I said, holy God, they're gonna shoot us, you know? So, and I wasn't any braver than anybody else, but the sergeant, you know, there was some guys, there was people that were married and they had responsibility. And as I'm corralled in the snowdrift there, all I remember, I just had my mother that I was, you know, I said, so long, Mom. And then this guy Chapman, who surrendered us, he's down on his knees crying. And I'm not braver than anybody else, but I didn't think too much of him for doing that, you know. He's begging, in other words, he's begging him. So remembering this Malmedy thing, where there's 12 of us, and this stupid thing came into my mind, that I'm going to dive under our own guys, because some did survive from Malmedy by diving under the other prisoners as the machine guns went off. And I'm thinking of that. Okay, so it didn't come to be getting shot because infantry officers came up and they stopped the tankers. And they said, no, don't shoot them. And the reason being, we had to help carry their wounded back, the damage we did. And we had to carry the wounded back to their lines. And I'll give you a short story of what happened. Well, I should have told you that they searched us, and they took I had ammo, hand grenades on me, and ammunition all over me. And in my pockets, I never smoked, but I used to take the cigarettes because I could trade them off for candy bars and food like that.
Right.
So I get, they searched me, they take all the ammo off, and then they found the cigarettes and the candy. I had candy on me, and, you know, in the baggy pants that everybody's wearing today, and you can put a lot of stuff in them. So they stripped me of all my cigarettes and candy, and they really were happy about that, like Christmas morning, even though Christmas was gone. And they searched me, and then they left everything on me but 3 pair of woolen socks, English wool socks, a big gray hair. They actually saved my life because a lot of people got frozen feet, and I'll explain to you what I did with them. But they sent us back with what they call a walking wounded. So we're carrying this guy in a blanket, and I said to he was a young fellow. He was evidently shot in the arm or something, but he guarded us with a pistol. We could never get away, Joe, because the snow was so damn high, and I didn't know where I was, and they were all around us, but we're carrying this wounded. So I said to my guys, I say, I think there was 3 of us, 4 of us, and maybe the guy was helping us, but we're carrying this wounded man. He's screaming every time we hit a bump. So I said to the guys that I'm with, and actually, when you say, did you know them? No, I didn't know these other guys. I had separated from my friends, but there was a couple in there that I was familiar with. So I said, you know, they left me with a hand grenade. I got a hand grenade on me under these socks. And they said, what? I said, they didn't take it, you know, under the socks. I had a hand grenade, you know. So they said, you better get rid of it, you know. So I said, well, let's put this guy down. We put the guy down, and evidently this young kid that's guarding me and the other 3 of us, I forgot now if it was 3 or 4, we were dragging this guy almost. So I said to the kid, I pull out the hand grenade, and I show him, and I said, you know, I want to throw it away. And he didn't even seem to recognize what a hand grenade was. So I showed him, if I pull the pin, it's going to blow up. He takes the pistol and sticks it up near my head. Seriously. And then I said, no. And I threw it out in the snow. And my other guy said, you know, it's good that you got rid of that, because you know we're going to get searched when we're down there. And we got down in the woods, we lowered the wounded man. Then an officer, they did search us again, and then we had to go in front of looked like an SS man. He was a mean son of a gun anyway, and he said he wanted to know how many replacements. We were really replacements, and he wanted to know how many replacements came over with us and so forth. And you know, and naturally you're supposed to answer your serial number 421244841, but that usually gets you a smack in the mouth. So you say, you know, I'm only a private. I have no information for you. So I get off. And then from then on, it was walking. And I walked to Luxembourg City, I think it was.
Where were you, did you have were they able to keep your winter gear, your jacket?
I had winter gear, luckily. And
were there some who didn't? Or?
There was a lot of them. Like, I was a replacement for the 101st. So the 101st had just come back from Holland, and they were in France, and they had to go up to the lines with ill equipment and everything. But when we went over, I had an overcoat, and luckily I had gloves, and I was able to keep them. But
yeah.
then it was walking, and I was never in a prison camp, but I was in a camp called in the city of Gerolstein. It was over the Belgian border, and it was called Stalag 12. They did give me a card. My mother got it maybe 2 months later, you know, but it wasn't an encampment. It wasn't a wire enclosure.
Right.
And we would go from there each morning, get up, and
where were you? Did you live in a big building, a
it was
farmhouse?
an old factory. It was
Okay.
an old factory. And then we would go out each morning and work on the railroad. And there was a town in Gerolstein, and I remember it like it was yesterday because I went back there with my wife and my son's father-in-law and mother-in-law, and they couldn't believe how I explained it to them.
Uh-huh.
And there it is, it sat in the valley, and it was a railroad that went through it, and we were out on repairing the railroads. And I used to do that. At night I'd carry lumber. I never slept. And it was just working all the time. And they gave me a little piece of bread once a day. And I ate snow for water many times.
Just bread?
I swear to God, no bread. I never got any meat. And I went from 180 to 90 pounds.
Wow.
And
Over a course of how long was that?
3 months.
3 months.
Yeah,
Wow.
3 months on. And
How were the when you know in the time that you were held captive? How were the guards? Did you get the sense that anybody cared about you as a human being?
Well, we were turned over to what I call the brown shirts. They were guys that were back from the front, or older gentlemen. You know, a gentleman. I don't call them gentlemen. They were just guards. You know, and they would push you around like I'd have to go up. See, our Air Force caused us a lot of problems on the ground because they would strafe us when we walked along the roads because they didn't know if we were Germans or Americans, and they'd come in, they'd strafe us, and then they would do damage in the towns. At night we'd have to go out and pick up the rubble, you know, and things like that. And then from then on, I got a big blank in there, but all I know is I walked and walked. And in towns, we'd have to go through towns, and if there was any work to be done, we'd do it there. Then they'd have to find a place for us to sleep.